Ever get totally sucked into a movie review? And then you're like, okay, I'm sold. This has got to be good. But then you see the Rotten Tomatoes score, and it's like a measly 60%.
Happens all the time.
It's like those critics are just crunching numbers, right?
Yeah.
They've completely missed the point. Give me the human story, the feels, the emotional roller coaster. That's what makes me want to watch.
Makes sense, though, right? Our brains are kind of hardwired to connect with narratives. Data points, sure, they're informative. But a well-told story, that goes straight to the heart.
And that is exactly where we're diving in today, the surprising power of storytelling. And not just for, entertainment. We're talking persuasion, building rapport, even winning cases in court.
Cases in court, exactly.
We've got a cheat sheet for this one. 5 storytelling approaches for lawyers to persuade, build rapport, and win more cases.
And before anyone tunes out thinking, ugh, law school, trust me, this stuff is pure gold for anyone who wants to level up their communication game. Seriously.
I am so ready to channel my inner Atticus Finch.
Okay.
So, spill the tea. What's the first storytelling approach these legal eagles are using?
First up, we've got the classic hero's journey.
I love that.
Think Luke Skywalker, battling the evil empire. Or even Ella Woods, all that unwavering optimism taking on the legal world. We can't help but root for those underdogs. Those are the stories that grab us.
Okay, so I'm already seeing how this plays out in court. It's not just about presenting the facts. It's about framing your client as the hero of their own story.
Right, exactly. It's not just a case. It's a battle for justice.
Love that.
And the source has this great example of a small business owner, right? They're going up against this massive corporation, totally unfair contract situation.
David versus Goliath.
Yes. And by focusing on the business owner's dedication, their hard work, the sacrifices they've made, suddenly this dry contract dispute, it becomes relatable.
Now, that's how you turn a jury into your own personal cheering section.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me, and I think for a lot of our listeners. It doesn't have to be a legal battle, right?
Absolutely not. Think about your own career path, or even just tackling a challenging project. If you can tap into that hero's journey framework, your wins become more inspiring. Your setbacks, they become relatable. It's a subtle shift, but it can make a big difference in how you connect with people.
It's like you're giving them permission to root for you, even if you're just trying to convince them to try that new Thai place downtown.
Speaking of connecting, that's where our next approach comes in, the monomyth.
Okay.
It sounds kind of academic, I know, but stick with me. This one's all about tapping into those universal experiences we all share. Love, loss, fear, hope, that kind of stuff.
Okay, now this is intriguing, but how does a lawyer, someone who lives in a world of logic and legal precedent, how do they effectively weave those emotions into a courtroom?
It's about finding the emotional core of a case and making that resonate. The source uses a really powerful example. A parent fighting for custody of their child. And yeah, there's the legal arguments, the technicalities, but when you tap into that universal love of a parent, that dedication, that hits different.
It becomes less about the letter of the law and more about just a deeply human experience.
Right, exactly.
That everyone can relate to.
And that leads us to another approach, which on the surface might seem like it's about structure, but it really plays on this emotional buildup, the mountain structure.
Okay, I'm already imagining those epic movie montages.
Yeah.
Where the music swells as the tension rises.
Yes. That's a great way to think about it. It's all about that rising action. You're building tension and you're leading the audience towards that satisfying resolution. The source uses a personal injury case as an example.
Okay.
So you start by laying out the facts, right? Maybe it's a car accident or some kind of workplace mishap, something seemingly straightforward.
Gotcha.
But then you start to peel back the layers. You reveal the lasting impact on the victim's life, the emotional toll, the financial burdens, all of it.
So you're gradually escalating the stakes, right? The jury's feeling the weight of everything at stake.
Exactly. And just when they're wondering if there's any light at the end of the tunnel.
That's when you bring in the legal claim, the compensation, the justice that your client deserves.
It's the natural culmination of this whole narrative.
Yeah.
The peak of the mountain you've been climbing.
I love that. And suddenly, that compensation, it's not just a number. It feels like the only possible outcome after that whole journey you've taken them on.
Right.
Okay, this mountain structure. I can see how this would be insanely effective in so many situations, way beyond the courtroom.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine giving a presentation at work. You need to pitch a new idea. If you can structure it with that same rising action, that buildup, and then the release, you'll keep your audience engaged every step of the way.
It's like turning a boring old PowerPoint into a summer blockbuster. Love it. Now, I gotta admit, the next approach, the and. But therefore, initially I thought, okay, this sounds a little too simple. Like, is this something you learn in middle school debate club?
I get it. I
Yeah.
totally get it, but don't underestimate it. The beauty of this framework is its clarity, its logic.
Okay.
And sometimes, in a world that's so driven by emotion, logic can be surprisingly persuasive.
So break it down for me. How does it work in practice?
It's about presenting your case like a clear, concise argument. You start with a fact, an and statement.
Okay.
Then you introduce a complication, a conflict, a different perspective. That's your but.
Right.
And then you deliver the final blow, therefore the logical conclusion that ties it all together.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. It's like building an argument brick by brick until you've created something rock solid.
Exactly.
Does the source give us an example of how this works in, an actual legal case?
Yeah. They talk about an insurance claim dispute. So it's like, and the client had insurance coverage, but the insurance company refused to pay when they needed it most. Therefore, the client is now seeking the compensation that they are owed.
It's so simple,
Yeah.
but so powerful.
Right. And like you said, sometimes the most effective approach is the one that cuts through all the noise and delivers that message with clarity and precision.
Yes, 100%. And the best part is, like you said, this isn't just for lawyers, this and but therefore thing.
Yeah.
It's like a secret weapon for winning arguments, right?
Yeah.
But it's disguised as a simple sentence structure.
Exactly. Negotiating a raise, convincing your friend to try a new restaurant. It can even work on your teenager when you're trying to explain why they can't borrow the car.
Okay, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Adding that to my parenting toolkit right now.
Uh-huh.
So we've covered 4 storytelling approaches so far. What's the final technique these legal masterminds are using? What's going to make us irresistible in the courtroom?
Get ready for this one. It's called nested loops.
Nested loops.
Okay. Imagine those Russian nesting dolls. You open one up and there's another one inside and another and another.
Okay, I love those things. But I got to be honest, I'm having a little trouble picturing how those adorable little dolls translate to, winning a legal case.
It's about layers. It's about weaving together multiple storylines to build something more nuanced, more convincing. You have your overarching story, the main case you're presenting.
Right.
But within that story, you have all these smaller interconnected stories, like threads in a tapestry. And each one, while interesting on its own, ultimately supports and strengthens that main argument.
So each one of these smaller stories, they add something to the main narrative.
Yeah.
Right. Makes it more relatable, more believable.
Exactly. And the source had this really interesting example about a business litigation case. So say you're arguing that a company was doing some shady stuff with their accounting, right?
Okay.
You could use all these nested loops. Like you could bring in the story of an employee who saw everything firsthand.
Oh, wow. So they're like the whistleblower.
Right. Or you tell the story of a client who was totally misled, or even a competitor who got pushed out because of these practices.
So each story is like another piece of the puzzle.
Right. Exactly. They all fit together to create this undeniable picture of what really happened.
It makes it so much more powerful than just kind of laying out the facts.
And the best part is this nested loops thing, it works outside of the courtroom too. Think about it, you have to pitch a complex project at work. Instead of just bombarding everyone with spreadsheets and charts, you weave in these smaller, relatable stories.
I'm listening.
Right. So maybe you talk about a client who's struggling with the exact problem your project solves. Or you share an anecdote about a colleague who had a breakthrough using a similar approach. Suddenly, you're not just talking about numbers, you're talking about people.
Suddenly, it's a story everyone wants to be a part of.
Exactly. And that's the power of storytelling. It helps us connect on a human level. It doesn't matter if you're a lawyer, arguing a case, or just trying to convince your kid to eat their vegetables. The right story can make all the difference.
Speaking of stories, I bet our listeners are ready to start crafting some seriously persuasive narratives of their own after this. Any parting advice for them as they hit the ground running?
Honestly, I think the most important thing is to tap into their own experiences, their unique perspectives. What stories can only they tell?
Ooh, I love that.
What are the things that they connect with on the deepest level? Because those are the stories that are going to resonate with other people too.
So true. It's like we're all natural-born storytellers.
Yeah.
We just got to own it.
It's a beautiful thing. Well, there you have it, folks. Another deep dive in the books. We learned how to use the power of storytelling to connect, persuade, and maybe even win a case or two. But remember the most powerful stories. Those come from within, so go out there and tell yours.